Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, once again, Little Blue, and of course we're continuing, Harrison Ford week, reviewing films that star Harrison Ford. Now, the third film starring Harrison Ford that we're reviewing, and not to mention this year marks the film's anniversary, and that being Ender's Game. So, what are the first things we have to say about Ender's Game? We'll start with you, of course.
Well, when I watched the movie, I thought, "What rock have I been living under?" Because
Me too.
I didn't even know it existed.
I did. I knew a little bit about this.
It came out in 2013, starred Harrison Ford, Ben Kingsley, and it was.
Yep.
There were several. On down this way.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
it
know.
says
I know.
I wanted to get the name
Gonna-
of the actor that played Ender Wiggin, Asa Butterfield,
Yeah.
which I'm not really familiar with him.
We saw him. He was in that movie, Tim Burton film, Miss Peregrine. He was the main star.
Peregrine, is it Peregrine or?
The unfortunate misfit children,
Okay.
that film.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that one. So
Yeah, he was good in that.
Yeah, he was in that. And I think he was Hugo Weaving in the Martin Scorsese film Hugo.
Okay.
Hugo Cabaret.
Okay.
So yeah. So you want to go ahead and you read it. You read the description / the story.
Well, I mean,
I've done this before. So
when the hostile aliens called the Formics attack Earth, only the legendary heroics of Mazer Rackham, which is played by Ben Kingsley, managed to attain a victory. To prepare for the next attack, Colonel Hiram Graff, which is played by Harrison Ford,
Yep.
and his cohorts initiate a military program to find the next Mazer. Recruit Ender Wiggin, played by Asa Butterfield. He
Yep.
exhibits an unusual gift for the training, easily mastering all of the challenges thrown at him. And Mazer Rackham himself takes Ender as a protege to prepare him for the oncoming war. So he's a brilliant kid. He's a natural-born strategist, can figure things out easily. So as they begin his training, they watch him and observe him and see how he develops strategies so quickly, not only in battle, but also in dealing with individuals and how he deals with them and his interaction with them.
Right.
So Harrison Ford's character is completely taken by him. And
yeah, I mean,
brings him into,
from the beginning,
Right.
He saw something in Ender himself.
brings him into this program, and
Yeah.
against the Formics, this alien race that had attacked Earth.
The Formics, yeah, and the humans are at war with the Formics.
Right. So I won't give away the ending, but
No, it doesn't matter.
he
Most of the time we talk about spoilers. So,
they defeat them, but
so it's fine.
he finds out that he has basically destroyed a species, and he can't live with it. I mean, he's beside himself. So he ends up going out in search of a new planet with the one survivor that's left that he's discovered of this race.
Yeah.
And that pretty much is the bottom line. He has a neat interaction with the queen, who is like the queen of this alien race. There's several queens, I guess, and they work like a hive, almost like queen ants that direct the other ants, the worker ants, to do what they have to do in the ant colony.
Right.
And so this alien species operates pretty much the same way, in that there's a queen who directs them, but apparently there's multiple queens because there's multiple colonies of these Formics.
Right.
And so he finds the queen, and she's dying, but she entrusts him with this surviving embryo, unborn Formic, this alien race.
Mm-hmm.
And he sets out across the universe to find a new home for him after having destroyed theirs.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford is praising him after the game. He thinks it's a game, but it's the actual war. They didn't realize that they were in actual war, but they're flying drones, so it's remotely. They're not actually in battle.
It makes them and us audience thinking that it is a simulation.
Right.
But no, the twist is
then they switch to actual satellite footage of the planet's surface, and you see this just been completely obliterated. It's nothing more than a molten lava pit now. It's just, everything is just completely destroyed.
Exactly.
And but Harrison Ford insists that he's a hero for what he's done, but he says, no, I'm a killer. He says, I've committed genocide against a race.
Yeah.
I've completely wiped out a race.
And Ender was right that he became a killer, like...
Yeah, but he redeemed himself because he didn't realize what he was doing. They basically, he was basically tricked, is what it was.
Yeah.
He and all those other students, that were...
And he befriended, like they were tricked.
Yeah, they were all tricked.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good movie. I was really impressed with it.
Mm-hmm. But more on the film because, first off, golly, because some of the characters in this, very harsh and mean, especially to Ender, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there was one guy that was, he was the leader of this one.
Bonzo.
Oh, yeah,
Madrid.
Yeah. He was unbelievable. And
he's like one of those characters where you just I kind of want to strangle him.
I don't know if he was that short. I'll just go ahead and say it. He was very short.
Ender was taller than him.
Everybody was taller than him. He was
and he's the leader of this group.
5 or 5'1". I mean, he wasn't very tall at all. But he had this Napoleon complex where he just went at, and thing of it is that apparently he could back up his words with actions because he was pretty tough. And I guess to be that small, you'd have to be tough, to get tough or die.
He was, yeah. And also, one of the other main characters, running that place. Do you remember the name of it? That was
the facility where they were.
The facility, yeah.
I don't remember the name.
And Harrison Ford, him as the colonel. There was also Major Gwen Anderson.
Right.
Viola Davis.
Viola Davis. She was actually a psychologist, and she was psychoanalyzing him, but Harrison Ford was going by gut instinct. So she would try and stop him from pushing him.
Right.
But in a sense, she was correct because in the end, he really couldn't handle the fact that he had wiped out a race.
Yep.
Despite the fact they had probably come to Earth, as Harrison Ford explained. Well, as Ender explained it, they had probably come to Earth to colonize it, but then they were turned away. We then went to war with us.
Yeah.
Killed millions of humans, and then we ended up destroying them. But in 50 years, they never returned.
Yeah, no, they didn't.
I'm not sure what year this is set in, but it's clearly in the future.
In the future, yeah.
There were a couple of vehicles they showed that were, very futuristic looking.
Yeah.
And, that, so obviously it was probably set close to the 22nd century.
Probably.
Because the technology was a lot more advanced.
And also, do you remember that Viola Davis, she was Amanda, what's her last name, from the Suicide Squad films that brought the bad guys together doing good things.
I remember that.
That's her.
Okay, yeah.
So before those films, she was in this.
Right.
So what you would recognize her from. And some of the kids in this, and who befriended Ender, Petra being played by Haley Steinfeld, and there was, I think, Bean, Alai, if I'm saying that right, that name.
Which one?
That one I'm pointing to.
Oh, Bean.
I'm pointing to
Aramis Knight?
No,
Suraj Partha.
He plays Alai, I don't know how you say that.
I would call it a lie, yeah. Suraj, yeah.
Hey, I can tell you have trouble sometimes pronouncing words. So.
Yeah.
Me too. As the many times I've said in these review videos.
That's an Indian name, so I'm probably not getting the pronunciation exactly right. But.
And here's something else, Sergeant Dapp. Yeah, literally, I think that's how you say it. Even though he was doing his job as a sergeant. My gosh, getting in Ender's face, and shut it and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, he was good. I liked his character.
And especially earlier, he was saying, "I will not salute you." But you know what? When Ender made it higher up, he did salute him. Yeah. So, and that's another thing because Ender, the colonel, granted him I guess being the leader of this group, a group this one group that hadn't been I guess used in years. The word dragon is in there.
Yeah. Funny scene.
And they couldn't like change the name because they already had the uniforms, according to the colonel. So
Funny scene when they took all these.
that's another thing. There are funny moments in this film.
They took some recruits when they took the recruits into space and they lifted off. They're pulling some serious G's lifting off, and I knew what was going to happen. I knew
Vomit.
Somebody's going to vomit.
Yes,
Somebody's going to
yes.
vomit. And sure enough, he did. The kid did, but he made it to his motion sickness bag. But then this drop came floating out. And I'm like,
obviously
they got to be gross.
He obviously did aim for the bag, but it still floated out.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know me and vomit in movies. It just repulses me. It's just like almost. I'll just almost
Even
get
though
up
it's
and walk
not,
out of
even
a
though it's
movie.
not real vomit.
Well, yeah, but it's the imagery that bothers me. It's like who wants to see somebody vomiting? I mean, that is just repulsive. I'm sorry.
I understand. Even like the colonel coming in and like telling him to close the bag. So
Yeah, because if he didn't, and the fact is, this is a fact. Astronauts in space, when they get, because a lot of astronauts do get sick and throw up in space because they get space sickness. They're not used to it. You go from 4 or 5 Gs, pulling 4 or 5 Gs, going into orbit, and then all of a sudden, as I've heard astronaut Gene Cernan describe it, he said is all this weight down on your chest, and then all of a sudden, it feels like when you're in the back of a pickup truck and you go over a hump, and it's that feeling on a roller coaster. Except it's constant, and you're just you're weightless. So a lot of them get sick, and when they do, there's a vacuum system that they use if they can't make it to the bag, because the vomit is going to float around, and if the danger is somebody inhaling it.
Right.
Which if they do, it could they get serious bacteria in their lungs, and it can make them really sick, give them pneumonia, even kill them. So they have a vacuum system that they use that they can suck it out of the air, out of the cabin if they need to.
Exactly. And more on like the characters that were kind of giving Ender a hard time, like especially because so there was like the sergeant, but also Ender's siblings, like his brother,
Oh, his brother! I couldn't stand his brother. His brother was.
What was his God? What was
he was a bully?
What was his brother's deal?
He was a bully, and he was jealous.
Even walking the door on his sister.
Yeah, he was jealous of his brother because he had washed out of the program. His sister had washed out of the program.
Valentine.
But he apparently that he had what it took, and he got into the program, and his brother. I think his brother hated him and resented him for it.
Yeah, the brother's name, I'm not sure.
You never hear much of his brother after that. You don't. They probably became estranged and his brother probably became a drug addict and everything else, and
I think it's Peter Wigging. I think that's
Peter Wigging. But he was awful.
I know. Even going for his younger brother's neck. Like, geez Louise. But
almost suffocated.
Yes, Valentine. She was like a great sister, and of course.
And they were very close.
Yes, very. That's the word I was about to look for. Very close.
Very close.
Valentine being played by Abigail Breslin, and Valentine was a good character and being one of the main important characters of this film.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one other thing is that Ender trying to send like emails to his sister, but earlier in the film he's unable to. It's blocked. Any attempt to contact, aside from Ender, anybody else, any chance of them trying to reach out and send out a message to them is impossible.
Exactly.
But I think a little bit later on, Ender asks the colonel, because here's the thing: the colonel brings in Valentine to meet with his brother and basically convince him. Mm-hmm. And in a way, he does, of course, go back to what he's doing.
Sure.
But especially a little bit earlier, before that, Bonzo, he was not through with Ender, Mm-hmm. Even when Ender made it high and commanded his own army,
Mm-hmm.
I think even two friends who became his friends, Petra and the other kid, I think they transferred to his group. Bonzo and 2 other kids with him, have him in the shower, and Bonzo just going after him. And then at one point, Ender kicks him, and he hits the shower floor.
Hits his head, knocks him out. Almost dies. But Ender
that was a hit on the hit a hard hit.
Well, it was, but he was defending himself.
Yeah,
so he
but
was not at fault, and they knew that.
And Ender didn't mean to
No.
severely injure him, but you know what? It's true. Bonzo started it.
Well, Bonzo brought it on himself.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. And he, I had no sympathy for him whatsoever. And when I saw, Ender, feeling sympathy, I thought, why would you feel sympathy for that guy?
Yeah, exactly.
But you see, he had a good heart, and that was part of the character build up in the movie.
Yeah.
Is you see what a good person he is.
Yeah.
Even though he's this brilliant military strategist, he can figure things out. He can assess a situation and know how to get on top of it very easily. He still has a big heart. He still has compassion, and that's what that scene was all about. To let you know that he's not cold-hearted.
Yes.
He's not single-minded of purpose. He's a very compassionate person.
He is, and even after what happened to Bonzo, he's getting surgery, and he's informed that Ender's informed by the Colonel that he'll live. Well, we never see Bonzo again in this movie.
No, we don't.
He's sent home, and that's it for Bonzo.
Yeah, that's it.
Bye-bye, Bonzo.
Bedtime for Bonzo.
I think it was probably for the best because, gosh, I think it's obvious, the fans, the audience, just despised Bonzo.
Well, yeah, and that's the way it was supposed to be. He was one of the main antagonists in the film.
Yeah, probably not one of the main villains, but a different kind of antagonist.
No, he was a different type of antagonist. He wasn't in the film very long, but he was in it long enough to see to see what he put Bender through.
Yeah,
Ender. I keep saying Bender. It's Ender.
No B. So.
Right.
And it was not just Ender. He was giving some of the other kids a hard time.
Oh yeah, he was.
And this was kind of strange. Bonzo was telling Ender not to train with Petra. Why do you think? What do you think? Why do you think he was keeping him from training?
Because he's a control freak.
He is, yeah.
Clearly, and he has a Napoleon complex because he's short in stature, and he figures he has to overcompensate, and that's what they call the Napoleon complex. Because Napoleon Bonaparte, who was a great war general, in France, he was very short in stature, but he was a brilliant military strategist.
Yeah, the film at times mentions Napoleon.
Yeah, they talk about the fact that Napoleon was a brilliant military strategist, but he was a jerk. He was a total jerk in real life. If you read anything about him, he was a jerk. One of my favorite dog breeds is a Newfoundlander. You call them Newfies for short, but they're bred to.
Even I would have trouble pronouncing that.
They're bred as a water rescue dog, and they can even their jowls have a place where they can actually breathe out of the side of their mouth while they're carrying somebody through the water, almost like a snorkel. And their paws are webbed. I mean, they were bred for water. So Napoleon actually fell overboard. One of his ships fell in the sea, and his dog, which was a Newfie, rescued him.
Right. Okay.
And pulled him, and almost made me hate the dog breed because I thought, see, you could have gotten rid of the guy right there if you just let him drown. But no, the dog has to jump in and save him. It has to be loyal and save him. But anyway, that's that.
Yeah. I mean, dogs and how they're attached to their owners and stuff like that.
It's unconditional love, that's for sure.
Yeah. By the way, those sequences where they're training, they're floating and stuff like that.
Very good special effects. That's the one thing I noted about that movie.
And by the way,
there was nothing that looked phony about it at all.
And by the way, because the visual effects being done by Digital Domain,
yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Well, basically, do you confuse any film that Digital Domain has done? Do you confuse that thinking that it's Industrial Light Magic?
No, I know ILM when I see it.
Me too. I mean, there were times where Digital Domain and ILM they worked on special effects on the same movie.
ILM,
but I think for this it was all Digital Domain.
ILM is a cut above the rest because ILM they leave no stone unturned when it comes to detail. They are down to the pixel. I mean, all the way down to the pixel.
I mean, heck, when the logo show at the begin, when this movie starts, Digital Domain's logo shows. So you know that Digital Domain, they did all the effects for this movie. So
yeah, it's sort of like ILM. They don't really need that much because they know their calling card is their special effects. People see a movie, they know it's ILM. ILM has their name at the end of the credits.
Yes.
So
I mean, who would think that they're an effects company would have their name at the beginning of the film? I mean, maybe I'm not complaining. I don't have a problem with that, but
it's sort of like, hey, it's us. We did this. Yeah, we did this. It's us. We did this. It's like, Oh well, I don't know. There was probably a deal they worked out.
Maybe-
with it. You know, they probably got a discount.
Maybe for a specific reason for this film, you know.
It could be that the producers and the director too decided. They said, you know,
Yeah.
they gave him maybe Digital Domain gave him a discount on their work. You know, they didn't charge him the full fee on producing the special effects for the movie, and they ended up just having they ended up putting their name at the beginning of the credits, saying, hey, you know, if you cut us like a 20% deal, we'll put your name at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
Probably what happened.
So about the training sequences where they're floating, like, you know, as they proceed, like especially with Ender, he has his own team now. They all get together like as one ball, I guess. You know.
Yeah.
There's that, and
that was a cool scene, actually.
It was a cool scene
because he played it out. You know, that some of them he would sacrifice a few, and it was very much the way he did that final battle. You know, supposed battle simulation when he had all those fighters surrounded that main gunship that had the big gun that destroyed the planet, basically.
Yeah, that Petra controlled.
And it acted as a shield. But you see, he didn't sacrifice anybody because they were all being controlled remotely.
Yeah, so like, were there anybody in those ships? I forget. Like,
there was one ship that there were 1,000 people killed, 1,000 humans killed in that, but they were already there. So there were manned vessels there, but the drones were not manned.
Okay. And those who were killed, like, they died in the line of duty, so...
Correct.
Yeah. And also want to mention, like, the chemistry between Ender and Petra. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll just go and say this, like, I don't know. I ship them, you know.
You what?
I ship them. You know what that means? Like as a couple. Like, they could be a couple. Just... I don't know.
You ship them?
You don't know what that term means?
I've never heard that term in my life. I've heard of shipping, as in shipping.
Well, viewers, you've heard them right there and then.
What? So. What? Shipping? What? Explain that to me. I want an explanation. Shipping.
Like, I don't know.
Ship someone.
You ship two characters. Like, oh, they'd be a perfect couple. Stuff like that.
Okay.
You know,
I'm just trying to.
I thought you knew this by now.
Is ship an acronym for something? Does it mean?
No, it is. It's a thing that people say. You know. Like,
does it stand for something? The SHIP stand for something like?
No, I don't think so. Like, okay, but
sweethearts in.
I think so.
Partnership.
I think so. Okay. All right. But
I'm making that up.
Okay. All right. But as I was saying, I liked the chemistry between, you know, Ender and Petra. And it seems like, I don't know, I was thinking like, oh, they seem like good friends, but hopefully like they would get together, you know? So
yeah.
I liked the chemistry between them. I think it was obvious, you know?
Oh yeah, it was I think it was very obvious they had chemistry together.
Exactly. Even when, say, after they find out, because, okay, but before I get to that, because anything to say, because, like, more on Ben Kingsley's character?
Ben Kingsley's character was interesting.
Mazur Reckham?
Yeah,
I think that's how you say the full name.
He, but I want to go back to Petra and Ender for just a second, because there was a scene when he was walking away from her. I think it was the very end when they parted, when he went into that cavern to meet that alien.
Well, that's at that I was going to get to that, you know.
Okay, but there was that scene when he walks away from her, and I literally said out loud, I said it out loud to the screen.
When you watched it,
when I watched it, I just watched it Saturday. I said, "Kiss her! Kiss her for heaven's sake! You know, come on, this is the perfect moment to kiss her."
Why did I not think of that?
And he never did it.
Why did I not think of that? You know what? I never thought of that as I was watching the movie. That not once that maybe he could have shared a kiss with her. Never did. Like,
missed his
now
opportunity.
you got. Thank you for mentioning that, because I didn't think of it until now.
Missed his opportunity.
Yes, that was the perfect opportunity. Yep. I'm sure that maybe for some of you guys, if anybody have watched this movie, maybe you would think of the same thing too, like us. But okay, but with that, because hey, when they find out that it was not a simulation, and I didn't actually see that coming. You know, I didn't see that coming. And I think
I didn't either when I watched it initially.
It was basically like a movie twist. Like, we talked about this before recording that.
It was definitely a twist, all right.
Yeah, and when they find out, because I don't know why did they do that to Ender? Like, they just they put him to sleep, like, you know.
Well, because I mean, he was over emotional and he was
Yeah.
irrational, and they had to sedate him because he was, he was in a bad way.
He was, yeah. And when they like put him in his quarters, like, Petra stays with him, And also, like, another thing, like, Ender was playing this game that is an important part of the film. And it's connected, like you said, like Ender going in and that like alien queen creature. So
Yeah.
and like seeing his sister, visioning his sister in that game as well. Like I was thinking, is there something connected with her? But as you said, no, there's nothing.
It was the emotional connection he had with his sister.
Right.
He was seeing his sister in all of these
Right.
scenarios, and that's what it was. That's what
Yeah.
it was. No more than that. Although I think they could have done a better job explaining that, or maybe not have done that at all, because it does kind of leave a question mark. Like, why did he keep seeing his sister? I figured it out. I knew it was because there was an emotional connection with his sister. There was a connection there. They were very close. They loved each other very much.
Yeah.
And he would see her in these situations, in these scenarios that he would imagine, or he would have visions and in dreams and things like
Very
that.
true, very true. And you realize this, like, the only, like, family member of Ender's that we see a lot is just Valentine.
Yeah.
Not much of his brother, nor his parents.
Exactly.
Golly, just saying. And, the ending to the film, like, golly, because I had a feeling, like, that was going to happen. Like, it ends off with him, because he promised that alien queen that, finding a new home.
Yeah.
And
he promised her. So
yeah.
And you could tell, he's standing there and he's crying. He has tears, and she could see those. You could see her in her eyes that she saw, because they show him crying. She could see, and then they flash back to her. She sees that. She knows he's sad. She knows that he's.
This is the alien we're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
The alien knows and senses, and I think when she touched him, she was able to feel him, almost like a Vulcan mind meld.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of when she did. I saw she's doing a Vulcan mind meld. I didn't think she was going to rip his throat out, which she didn't, obviously.
And, like, she knows that Ender is a faithful human.
And he's very remorseful for what he did.
Yeah.
And she knew, I think when she connected with him, she knew that he was deceived. That he was deceived into believing that it was a simulation.
Yeah.
When it was in fact it was the real thing, and they were literally annihilating this race.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the ending, because it ends off with him, finding a new home, and it would have been cool if we got a shot of him and those who became friends of him, like, joining him. I assume they probably would.
Well, or at least Petra,
Yes, at least Petra, exactly. And
Yeah.
again, as we said, he should have shared a kiss with her.
He should
and
have.
I would assume that probably more than likely she would tag along with him.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's amazing that, we could have by now gotten a sequel to this movie.
We could have.
Do you think that it would have been great if we had gotten a sequel?
I think it could have been done. It would have been,
Could have been
writing, but
could have been easy to do.
yeah, could have been.
Again, as long as they could have found a way to make it good,
Yeah.
Because this movie, like, we think it's good.
Yeah,
And
it is a good movie.
were you surprised? Because when we were watching this, like, the credits rolled and we saw Alex Kurtzman, Robert Orsi's name on. They produced this movie.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. They're usually, when their name's on something, it's pretty good.
They've done a good chunk of sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Transformers and Star Trek, But overall, this movie we thought was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was really good.
An interesting piece of sci-fi, don't you think?
A very interesting piece of sci-fi.
Yeah.
As interesting as any other sci-fi I've watched,
And you were surprised to see that, like, knowing that Harrison Ford was in this, and, like, this was, like, his second, like, science fiction film after Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Wars, it's space fantasy. It's not just sci-fi.
Right, exactly. But I call it more sci-fi than anything else, because, I mean, come on, let's face it. They're in space. There's ships flying.
Yes.
It's sci-fi,
But, again, there's a little bit of fantasy in Star Wars.
Well, there is.
Yeah, so makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's well established there. And how do we rate this film?
I'd give it 4 out of 5 stars.
4 out of 5 stars?
Yeah.
Okay, because you do the 5 out of 5, and I do the 10 out of 10. For me, I give it... it's on my mind. I'll give it 8 out of 10 stars. The 8 fingers. 8 out of 10 stars for me, for Ender's Game. Again, this should have had a sequel by now. Who knows? You know, overall,
Maybe it will one of these days.
It's this film is good for what it is.
Yep, agreed.
So yeah, good film. But with all that being said, you know, what about you guys? What did you think of Ender's Game itself? There's no doubt that there would be a lot of people that would have enjoyed this, because I don't think this was a disaster when it came out.
Oh, no,
it did pretty decent, I think.
It did.
Yeah, and let us know what you thought of our review. Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. Any last words?
I must be off.
He says that. For me, we hope you've enjoyed our review of Ender's Game. More review videos coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and we'll see you guys in the next video/review. And of course, reviewing the Harrison Ford films are still continuing. Next, well, I think it's obvious, because you know what we're going to be reviewing next. Hence, and with the shirt I'm wearing, you know what we're reviewing. Crystal Skull. Take care, and peace out. Yeah.